So I was talking to Tyler Watkins, and he had mentioned that his group chat, which I guess is like mostly like Sevan, Hiller, and like a lot of the people who show up on Sevan's show, were very taken aback by the fact that you said that in one of our last podcasts that this year's Open was one of your favorites. If not, maybe you even said it was your favorite.
Yeah.
And they were like, what?
Mac said it was his favorite.
Yeah. And what is this guy smoking?
And then I heard afterwards that Brannen thought I was crazy when I said it too, even on the podcast.
Yeah, so explain yourself.
All right, fine.
Hold on, Brannen. You disagreed, so why?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'd have to like start from like the very base foundation of like what are we actually trying to get at with the Open test. And so the first question to me would be like, what is an actual test of fitness? But that takes us down this rabbit hole, and maybe we can go there. But if I'm just looking just subjectively, like which test did I like the most, which ones did I think were the most well-rounded, and which ones were more standardized, it definitely wouldn't have been this year's, and mostly because of the second workout.
Yeah, but I think I said it was my favorite Open, not that I thought it was the most accurate test of fitness that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So to defend myself, so the floor layouts were like a huge problem for a lot of people, and a lot of people kept bringing it up, but it wasn't an issue for us. We had plenty of room to do 25-foot shuttle runs on both sides of the rig, and it was a little bit of a logistical thing because we were expecting to be on our side, but I called up Travis and I was like, hey, this is what we got to do. So like there were no floor plan issues that we had to deal with.
And again, that's not to say that you don't understand that other people had issues. You're just saying when you're
for
defending
you,
it, that it's your
but
favorite.
this is my personal bias. Yeah, I said this is my favorite in terms of.
I'm going to be the empathetic one and think about
we can just end the episode now.
The 10,000 gyms that don't have that space. Or like I think about my gym back in Florida, that we didn't have the space to do that. And so we would have had to go through like 2 people at a time with 120 people in the gym. It's just not possible.
Yes. So I agree with that. I'm going to jump on the negativity bandwagon at some point in the conversation. But first I'm going to start with why it's my favorite. So it's also done as a test for the general population. And in this workout structure, there were 2 tests that were pretty much strength only. There was one test that was pretty engine-y, and in the engine test, there was a lot of variation. Like there was the row, there was the toes to bar, there was the wall ball. So you got kind of like all those MGW things. And then the shuttle run burpee workout, I didn't really like it as a test. I thought the way they enforced it wasn't really good, but it was a conditioning test in the sense of getting the like monostructural and very breathy based stuff. Now for general population people, if you're saying I want everybody to be able to do things, I think that type of workout style is much less likely to injure people, beat them up, leave them quitting the Open because it's too hard. If you make 5 classic CrossFit tests, I think if you looked at all the data of just like general gym goers, by week 3, people are like pulling out, not doing it anymore.
Back in the day?
Yeah, back in the day. So I thought the structure of the test matched what their outcome was of making it more universally applicable for general people. And the most
well, everyone else is jumping in like, well, what about them muscle ups in week 1?
Yeah, I get that. But the muscle ups for most general people never got there. Yeah. So it was like, is it really that bad that it's in there? And it made the floor plan easier. Like most class members, it's like, well, you're not getting there. Don't even worry about it. So,
well, but I mean, that's not necessarily true. There were thousands and thousands of people that did get to the muscle ups. They just couldn't do one. Yeah. And so those gym members would want to at least attempt a muscle up because the dream is always, I get my PR during the open workout, which CrossFit, they put on their website all the time or on their Instagram, like, look at these PRs in the Open.
That's
CrossFit
probably
works.
why they wanted that test.
Sure. Yeah. And I get that. Well, Bosman talked about this on his podcast with, what's his name, Sherwood. Yeah. And he said that he wanted one test that was a repeat for 22 or 23.1. He wanted something new for the second workout, and then he wanted something heavy. And that's how he classified it, which is very reductionistic. But at the same time, like, I think that's fine for the Open.
Yeah, I think it should be reductionist for the Open. Like, I think the level of complexity of the test should increase as you go through each stage if you're phasing out the low-level people. Now, the problem with this is most people love the Open as a like it became a spectacle as it was rising, the open announcements and all the hype Castro brought, and it was actually growing the sport. But if you really boil it down to what CrossFit's trying to get out of it, it's hard to create a good test that's going to challenge the elites and then also be universally scalable. Like CrossFit's whole thing is workouts are universally scalable. But if you're saying I want one test to get everyone, it's like, all right, well, then you kind of got to write to the lower common denominators. You can't write to up here and can't make it a cool sport.
Yeah, I guess then my pushback would be on 22.2. You say that's a simple test that tests everyone, but half of the population could walk the shuttle runs and then just go fast in the burpees, and they still got a competitive score.
Yeah.
If there's a workout where you can essentially just walk, or you can go at a very easy pace on one piece and then pace something harder, it's probably not a good test.
Yeah. But one of the other reasons that this was one of my favorite opens is that the open for like higher level athletes generally in the past is just like watching them suffer for 5 straight weeks going like complete max effort and doing amazing things. But there's not really, I mean, there's a couple workouts that I can think of in my past where there were exciting times. But this year, that third workout, watching Lydia like crush through the end of the barbell and finish the workout, watching David come back and redo the workout and get through it. Like there were just cool, exciting, young athletic development moments that happened in the open tests, which are usually sometimes boring. So I wanted to add that to this is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Do you still think I'm crazy?
No, I do think you're crazy. Look, you can have your opinion. Like, everyone's allowed to have an
What's
opinion.
What's your favorite CrossFit Open?
I knew you were going to ask me. I look through every single year on my tiny sheet, and I just can't narrow this down, but I think if you had a gun in my head, it'd be 2019. And so I'll walk through these real quick because I think that this is just a more well-rounded, and it kind of goes to my point of just like it's true CrossFit. All
so
the way
you're picking your favorite tests.
Yes,
not your favorite open experience. Your favorite
right. My favorite test based on these are more well-rounded. It's testing all kinds of different variations. The time domains are kind of the same, which is still a complaint of mine, but there's still one here that's a little bit more high-powered. There were separators, which I think are important. One of my rules, and this is not fair because it shouldn't be true in the open, but I've always said if someone that's just fit can jump into, let's say, the quarterfinal workouts and do well on them, they're just probably not very good tests, right? Like we need to have some kind of separator for the sport in the way that it is right now. But 2019, 15-minute AMRAP, wall balls, calorie row. That's a true engine test. It's going to be able to help the bigger athletes that Kyle Ruth always complains about. He's always saying it's a short person sport, which is true, but I think it has that. And then it also does have that accuracy component, because of the wall balls.
So I'm still calling that a weak accuracy component, though.
I agree. The next test was the 25 toe to bar, double under, and then squat cleans, which I think is a great test for testing
the one that
strength.
Increased.
You're getting coordination with the double unders, which I think is important. You're getting some core control with the toe to bar and just a gymnastics test, and then you're also getting strength endurance with the squat cleans, and there are separators in both the double unders, toes to bar, and in the squat clean. So it wasn't just a strong person.
You had to be good at everything.
Correct. The next one was, this was probably my least favorite test, but I liked that there was a separator here. The dumbbell overhead lunge, box step up, handstand push up, handstand walk. It was kind of segmented because it really just came down to the handstand push ups. But I don't mind them having that in there because they've tested it so often in semifinals or what used to be regionals in the games that you have to have those gymnastics tests. One of the mistakes they've made in the past is not testing enough gymnastics in the open and then testing a ton in the next stage, and people just couldn't do it. But to your point, I don't think that they should. It's just, I don't know how you would balance that out to funnel the right people into the next stage if the open is the first stage to get people through, right? The next one was the snatch bar facing burpee, and then you rested 3 minutes, and then it was bar muscle up, bar facing burpees. That's just a great high power test. It's a shorter time domain. Most of these open workouts, and you talked about this earlier, but they're all 8 to 15 minutes. And that one for most people, I mean, obviously you had that 3 minute rest, but it was 2 sprint style workouts, especially for the best, which I like. I like having something short. And I know for most people that's boring. Like they don't want a 500 meter row in the open, but if you want a well-rounded test of fitness, then you have to have something that's more high powered. And then the last one's classic CrossFit is a 33, 27, 21, 15, 9 thruster chest to bar. But I like having that.
Let me see this.
Yeah. Good luck reading it.
Yeah.
Can you read any of that?
No, I remember going through and thinking that I liked one of the testing, like if I were just picking tests by themselves, but then I got distracted with all my other thoughts and I never finished. This is such small font. This is ridiculous.
You know, when I printed it, I changed it to 10 font, but I think it stayed at 8 because I can't read it either.
Yeah. I mean, they're all just CrossFit-y,
Yeah.
which is fine. Like, the thing is, I like CrossFit, and I like watching classic CrossFit and watching good people race it. I just, don't think it's good for open-level people. Like, if you work in a normal box, you just walk in and you say, how many people Olympic lift proficiently? Even, the...
Go ahead, I'll wait.
the 70th percentile. Like, they can even, and not even snatch, just like a squat clean, that they can actually extend their hips and keep a good bar path and actually get into the bottom of the squat and actually come up at anywhere close to their body weight. But 135-pound Olympic lifting movements are coming in a second bar in the last workout. It's like, all right, well, even just with weightlifting, which is probably way lower complexity than higher level gymnastics, the tests would have to be so basic and boring if they were actually going to test the bottom 50% and give them something. And if you did that, you're already ostracizing the entire group of people that built the sport. So my solution would be quarterfinals, get into it, known and knowable tests. You can sign up however you want. There's no qualifier. You want to get to semifinals or just test yourself in the sport, you sign up for quarterfinals. The Open is now separated from it. It's not a filler to quarterfinals. It's run once a year, and its primary goal is to somehow serve the affiliates. And if you want to make your high-level athletes do it, either pay them to do it or make it that you need that data to be able to get into the quarterfinals, to submit your quarterfinals. Like I don't know what the solution to it is, but
The only problem
separate
with that
them.
is that you would not call it quarterfinals if it was the start of the.
You would not.
What would you call it?
You would,
The preliminary
quarterfinals
round?
means that it's a stage past.
It's the next stage.
Yeah.
All right, so here's a good question
just
for you
fucking
then.
with
I get it.
Of the tests that we have since 2011,
Yeah.
which year was the most well-rounded test of fitness?
Yeah, I need to dig in deeper
Yeah.
to give you a good answer.
So
'cause
I
didn't
still think
look at
it's
them that way.
2019.
I mean, I would say that I would most likely agree with you just because I know we think alike in some of the capacity of trying to figure out the MGW time domains types of tests, but I don't remember them all off the top of my head. I went through 11 to 15 pretty in depth this morning, and I've already forgotten all of them. So I would definitely need to write my thoughts down on that.
Yeah, I'm interested. I want to hear people in the comments what you guys think.
I would like to know what other people think is their favorite Open and why. I want to
subjectively,
know,
I
even
just like this test.
Tyler Watkins. You get in the comments and answer my question.
He said 2018.
What were they what were they when they said I said it was my favorite? Were they thinking that I was my favorite tests?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know and what their favorite was, because. Well,
if you're listening, you guys.
Yeah, and Sevan is crapping on these workouts and the way that it's done.
Was he crapping on these workouts?
Oh, I don't know. You said he was on the thread.
No. All I said was that in the thread they seemed confused
as to why this
be
was
your
my
favorite.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to know what their favorites were. I thought they were just shitting on this, and I'm like,
oh, I don't know. They could be.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Maybe I should listen more to what their podcasts say. They put out a lot of them.
Yeah.
Do a lot of podcasts.
They stay going.
Yeah, a lot of videos.
Chris, your favorite?
Yeah, do you have
my
a favorite?
Open?
Yeah.
Oh,
It'd be 2012 with the 7 minutes of burpees.
Yeah, it's just that test.
Just the one.
That's the only
test.
thing that matters to me.
Yeah.
I
think 2011 was the most valid test because that's when I beat Travis. So it definitely had to have been the best test of fitness.
You know, they did have some shorter ones and longer ones in there.
Does any of them stand out the opposite, where you're like, that was just a garbage year?
I think last year.
Last year was a garbage year?
Yeah,
I think
it's
so.
Probably my least favorite.
I mean, it's everybody has personal bias. I can't remove my personal bias. I did those workouts. I hated those workouts. They were all body weight. I understand what fitness is, and I didn't think they were good tests of fitness. So that was my least favorite. That it's okay, you have only 3 tests to test fitness, and all 3 of them are testing me in the same exact thing. How much do I want to suffer through body weight based workouts in the same time frame?
Yeah, really, the
I didn't
last
like
3
that.
years I think
All right.
are all
Yeah.
equally bad in my view.
So I think the action steps here is we got to come up with CrossFit a way to make money from all the people in the affiliates that has nothing to do with starting the season of the sport.
Yeah. I want to be clear. I have no solutions as to how to fix this problem. And I'm pretty sure that like anybody that's in that jaded category, if they got into the conversations of like, they're inheriting this big like history of like, all right, well, this is how things are done and this is what our community likes and this is what we think needs to be done. It's probably not easy to come to like a decision that changes these things quickly.
You know who we should go out there to Travis's gym right now and pull like a couple average members. I wonder if someone who just started CrossFit this year or last year, what they think of the Open. Because, you know, back in our day, like kind of like what I was alluding to is you felt like you could move on to the next stage. So there was just like a level of excitement in the gym. Yeah. And I think there was definitely excitement here, but are they excited about the sport or was it they were excited about coming in and working out with the homies, which is a whole different thing.
I think that there's something to the top 10% that there was excitement here. I also think in this gym, again, you'd have it's not a representation of the actual affiliate network because it's big, it's well organized, there's space for people to do it. They were able to get it into the class structure. If you only have one lane for shuttle runs in your gym, what do you do with 20 people coming into the workout? Like I'm guessing that they just stopped doing classes and their gym owners were there all day just letting people go through the open workout and people would have to pick a day to do it. Like I'm sure if you're in at a gym like that.
Or worse, they dropped into a gym that did have the space, and then once they were there, they're like, hey, this gym's pretty nice. And we switched my membership.
Yeah, the pull-up bars can't get moved, so you have to jump up to it 8 inches.
That affiliate's like, I'm never doing the Open again.
Yeah, so I'm guessing there's a lot of people that were unhappy about it.
Yeah.
So here we've worked on the process of our on-site community of figuring out how to get judges more involved and people involved and build the community because generally the Open was hard for TTT because all of our coaches would have to try to coach our athletes and then also judge our athletes so that the athletes could get ready. This year, and I think because of the way we've done the throwdowns every year, our whole community was helping ease the burden of judging for each other. And that just made it so that coaches could coach better. Everybody was dialed in terms of heat. So it was organized. People felt like they could get to the workouts on time. And for most affiliates, that's not a big deal because you're just putting it in a class. But for us, it's like we want to serve our athletes to let them get the best out of themselves. But we also can't let everybody be on their own time because we just don't have enough space for that. So we operated really smoothly through it, which was for me, like, again, it's my personal selfish bias that this was one of my favorite. No major injuries. And then I guess to jump on the negativity bandwagon, and maybe this can start the next part of the conversation, is I don't think the CrossFit Open has ever been a good test of fitness. And I think there have been these issues, like it's a recency bias. Everyone's like, oh man, 22.2 sucked. And I'm like, yeah, it's not really the best test. But if we go back, the first open workout ever in 2011, when the sport wasn't really even like developed, and if you walked into an average gym, most people like couldn't touch their toes. They were like just getting started being fit. It had double unders in it. And there was huge uproar because people couldn't do double unders at the time. But CrossFit was like, well, figure it out. This is how you get better. And then it kind of spawned people to do double unders. But when that happened, there was huge uproar. So there's little things like that. I went through like 11, 12, 13, and just like pulled up some issues. I'll start with one. 2014 had a barbell in every single test. It's like, all right, well, is that really a good test of fitness if there's a barbell in everything? Like,
well, I think we need to, you have to step back though. So what is a test of fitness, right?
Yeah.
Because so like we started the podcast where.
Buckle up, everybody.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing though. And this is like a really interesting topic because Chris heard from Sevan and Hiller and all them saying that you're crazy, but they have a different paradigm.
Right.
They are right. But they have a different concept of what fitness is than probably you do. And so we're speaking at two different levels. So I think the first step is let's find a definition of fitness that actually works for everyone. And CrossFit has somewhat provided that, but then they don't follow it. And I think that's probably what your issue is.
Yeah.
And so we need to first define what you think fitness is, or if it's CrossFit's definition, then let's go and nitpick the workouts from there.
Yeah,
we would assume that CrossFit would disagree that they don't follow it.
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay, so if they have this definition, which anybody that's gone through the level 1 knows what they define as fitness and the general skills and all of
Let's
that.
just summarize it. There's 10 skills, then there's 3 major energy systems, and then there's the concept of the hopper, meaning that if I sat down and I was like, I'm going to make up any physical task, the people that are most fit are going to be able to adapt to that constant change in whatever the thing is and be able to do it well. So I'm kind of looking at it simply through that lens. It's like, all right, well, you're calling that fitness. Now let's look at the test and say, did we test it? Like, just looking at evidence.
We could break that mold right away just from this year's test because they were all the same time domain, which therefore means we're not hitting all the energy systems in the way that they describe them.
Yeah.
It's not across broad time and modal domains. It was one time domain and it wasn't broad.
Yeah, so I agree with that. But like, here's 2013, 10 minutes, 17 minutes, 12 minutes, 7 minutes, and then there's a 4-minute ascending workout window, which meant most people are finishing between 8 and 12. So in 2013, you had the same issue as they've never tested according to their definition.
Isn't this where people jump in and say, but you got to look at the whole body of tests, and that would include regionals and sectionals and semifinals and quarterfinals.
Okay, so then they're biasing
but 90%
the test.
of people don't do those.
Right.
So it's
More
like
than
you can't
that.
call that you can call this the first step in the test of fitness to find the fittest, but you can't say that you're doing the open as your test of fitness.
It would literally be like we're trying to qualify for the PGA Tour, and Max and I only have to make 1-foot putts, and if we just make 5 of those in a row, then it's like, okay, you move on. But we haven't tested any of the other skills to be a good golfer, or the same thing with any other sport. Like, you have to be well-rounded. And so I think if they say this is the test of fitness, this constantly varied across broad time, modal domains, all that, these 10 general skills, then we need to be as well-rounded in the first stage. That doesn't mean that you're testing all the high-level skills, but you don't need those high-level skills to test what they call fitness, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, but it's just a problem is then, okay, well, how do you get the community excited about doing it? Because here's the major issue, is they have this philosophy that has moved the market. It moved a lot of the leaders of the fitness space let's say from 2005 to 2015, there were a huge number of leaders in the space, in nutrition, in weightlifting, in bodybuilding, in gymnastics, that listened to the methodology, and it moved them to change their perspective about how they trained people and how they thought about training. Then over time, the actual application of the training started to divert way away from that original concept. And people keep getting frustrated that it's not classic CrossFit. But if I just say, okay, we're going to do a triplet, and I'm going to put a time cap on it. I'm going to say it's 10 minutes long. It's going to start with 100 strict handstand push-ups, and then it's going to have a 1K row in it, and then it's going to finish with heavy snatches. So you got your M, your G, and your W in one test. Now, if it starts with 100 handstand push-ups and I have a 10-minute time cap, you could have somebody that is a world record rower and a world record power lifter, but who has no gymnastics capability, maybe because they're heavy or something like that. They couldn't do 100. And now your test basically said, well, you're better at 2/3 of the things that encompass fitness, but because of how I designed this test, a gymnast is going to win it, who is the least fit in terms of broad capacity. So when you start to create classic CrossFit stuff, our community loves doing that, but it diverts away from real fitness. Real fitness would be much more, it would be like 90% of the time it would be more isolated. Like, we're going to test strength. We're going to test rowing. We're going to do, and if you look at the games athletes, that's how they train more. They're doing more like jump on the bike and just do bike intervals, jump on a track and do just running intervals, go do some strongman training, follow a weightlifting program. Those are all independent and not classic CrossFit. Then they throw classic CrossFit into it and do it. So I think that's one of the major issues, is that you can't really create a sport out of testing fitness at the earlier levels without saying it's going to be pretty boring. Like, the NFL Combine is boring. Decathlon to watch is boring because they're takes a long time to run people through them. There's no racing. There's no excitement. People aren't wrecked and throwing up after the workout.
Do y'all think that the first stage should be dumbed down, or is it like, fuck it, if you don't got it, you don't got it? Hope you enjoyed this clip of the Corpus Animus Podcast with Max and Brannen. To hear the full episode where Max defends why this was his favorite CrossFit Open, Why the sport, being unknown and unknowable, continues to cause problems, a discussion on the growth of the sport or lack thereof, and the future of AI, deepfakes, and ChatGPT. Check out the audio version on all major podcast providers or peep the other clips here on YouTube.